Okay, hello everyone. Getting ready to start. Hopefully we have better luck this time. I tried something a little different with the setup, so let's see if that makes it more stable. I'm just going to redo the same topic from last week because it cut off so quickly. Start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so what we have been doing is looking at the progress of insight, which is a scheme for describing the stages or states of mind that a meditator goes through in the course of Vipassana. The original kernel of this teaching is found in a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya that lists 7 purifications, 7 visuddhis, but these are not elaborated upon, as we find in many instances in the Sutta Pitaka. There is a list given without any description, and then it's up to the commentators to develop a description. And in this particular list became very important in later times and was expanded with various subheadings to make up a list of 21 stages of insight. And this scheme forms the skeleton or the framework of the Visuddhimagga, one of the most important texts in Theravada Buddhism, the whole 900-page text, which is intended as a kind of a comprehensive overview of all the teachings. Buddhaghosa used the 7 purifications and the 21 stages of insight as the framework to hang his major treatise upon. In more modern times, it became an important teaching for the Burmese Vipassana tradition, and particularly Mahāsi Sayādaw. And in this series of lectures, I'm using as a framework the book Progress of Insight by Mahāsi Sayādaw, which you can find online easily. It's a very valuable text. It's fairly short, and it lays out the stages of insight in a very clear and lucid manner. So what we've gone through in the previous couple of lectures are the first 2 visuddhis, purification of conduct and purification of mind. Purification of mind was treated by Mahāsi as the chapter in his book that dealt with that is mostly devoted to a description of his method, which is the noting method, noting objects that arise to consciousness. So we're really getting into this week. We're really getting into the stages that the mind goes through, and the first one described is under the heading of the purification of view, the Ditti Visuddhi, and that includes one of the stages of insight, the analytical knowledge of body and mind, Nama Rupa Parichedanyana. And according to the system laid out by Mahāsi Sayādaw, what this entails is the gradual realization by the meditator of the difference between consciousness and objective consciousness. This is an extremely important insight and lays the foundation for everything that is to come. The basic object used in the Mahāsi method is the movement of breath at the abdomen, which is a relatively complex physical process relative to the breath at the nose tip, which is more commonly used in jhana work. But being aware of the whole movement of the abdomen, the rising and falling of the abdomen as one breathes, there's a bit more going on. It's and the meditator should come to see this bodily process as something other than the mind. The mind which knows the object is different than the object. It's called analytical knowledge of body and mind because it's most evident in the case of the body, that we can see the sensations in the body as objects of consciousness. This is not meant to be merely an intellectual or theoretical understanding. This is something that should arise naturally with the process of observing, that there are these two parts to every observation with the mind. There is the object, which in this case is the movement of the breath at the abdomen, but it might be a mental object like a passing thought, or it might be a sense impression like a smell or a sound. There are these objects, and there is the mind alighting upon or knowing the object. And it's seen that the mind goes out to the object. That the object is, in this relationship, the object is inherently inert. And it is the consciousness, the vijnana or chitta, that arises to take the object. So it's the chitta is the essentially subjective aspect of the mind, is the simple knowing. And there's this pairwise relationship in every moment of consciousness. There is an object and there's the mind knowing the object. This seems, when we talk about it in this kind of a analytical manner, it seems sort of simplistic, but it's actually a very profound insight, because normally the unenlightened mind muddles it up and is confused between the object and the knowing of the object. And we get lost in the objects, essentially. No. In the Thai forest tradition, which speaks about these matters in a quite different idiom, the emphasis is on the knowing mind, the chitta, the awareness, being centered in the knowing. And the objects are all seen as external to the chitta. In the Burmese tradition, in the Vipassana tradition, there's more emphasis placed on knowing the objects. And by knowing the objects of consciousness, then the role of the knower, of the chitta, becomes known by or experienced by comparison. it's the knowing mind which goes forth and takes the object. The object is essentially external to that and basically inert. But it goes a little bit beyond this. The analytical knowledge of body and mind, distinguishing, which could be called knowledge of subject and object. I think that would be a more general, in a way, more comprehensive title. Or the knowledge of the knower and the known. What this comes to, when this comes to be really known or experientially, when it becomes a reality, and a reality in the experience of the meditator, this is a major step towards understanding the teaching of not self, anatta. Because as Mahāsi Sayādaw says in one of his writings, the meditator comes to see there is just the object, the mind arising to the object, and no third besides. And the third being the self. So in this process, that is the basic reality of our experience as sentient beings. In every moment, whether we're meditating or not, whether we're aware of it or not, there's this process going on of mind taking an object. There's an endless stream of objects, and mind is alighting upon them. But that's all that's happening. There's nobody doing it. When we think, there are thoughts, but there's no thinker. When we move, there's movement, but there's no mover. And also, it's empty on the other side, the consciousness or the knowing. There is the knowing, but there's no knower. There's no one doing it. There's just this process that is essentially empty of substance on both sides. There's an object arising due to causes and conditions, and there's consciousness alighting upon that object. We're trying to, with the formal practice of Vipassana, we're trying to set the conditions or foster the state in which this becomes obvious, becomes evident. And this is done in the Mahāsi Method. This is done by trying to be very quick and precise at noticing the objects. And we try and just break things down as finely as we can. So in an instance of eye consciousness, there is the sense impression in the eye, then there's the perception of the object, there's a feeling arising about the object, there might be mental formations arising thinking about the object, and all this is in all these are separate instances that are known to consciousness. So we'd always be trying to break things down to a finer degree, so we don't let things become a big confused muddle. That it's a theory in Abhidhamma that may seem counterintuitive, but when one really examines the mind closely, it seems to be borne out. The theory is that in each instance of consciousness, which is very, very brief, very quick instant of consciousness, a moment, a mind moment, there's one and only one object. So you don't, for example, you don't see and hear at the same time. You may be sitting there watching this video, you're seeing me talking and you're listening to my voice, and it seems on a course level, it seems like you're seeing and hearing at the same time. But according to Abhidhamma, what's actually happening is the mind is switching rapidly back and forth between hearing and seeing. The mind can only take, in reality, only one object in a moment. Now, no matter how good we get at Vipassana meditation, it's unlikely we're going to get to that rapidity of noticing that we can actually distinguish individual mind moments. These are extremely brief occurrences, but we are always trying to get closer and closer to that optimal speed of noticing. And this requires quickness and precision of mind, cutting through the complexities and breaking things down as far as possible into their individual components. This is quite different than in a kind of sense of general fuzzy awareness that I think meditators who try to develop what's sometimes called choiceless awareness without any kind of disciplined technique behind it will fall into this. There'll be a lack of precision. There'll be a lack of clarity. There might be a kind of a general awareness, but it doesn't really cut through because it doesn't see things on this individual, sharp, clear level. And that's what's required for this important insight of distinguishing subject and object, of knowing body and mind. So that's pretty brief, but it's the main points of this stage. This in the sequence of insight, the stages of insight. And it's a very important one. It's a foundational one. So and I think the internet has held up for us this far. I'll stop now and go into a discussion on your questions, if you have any, and we'll continue next week with going through the stages. Okay, we've got something coming up here. Let's expand the text. Hello, when doing this practice recently, I've noticed what feels like a merging of the object of consciousness and chitta in the moment of knowing, or chitta in the moment of knowing, or is that right view, or do I need further refining? No, I don't think that's quite right. I kind of know what you mean. There's a sense when you really know the object, chitta's taking the object, but you're still not clarifying that distinction between the knowing and the known. You have to kind of get outside of that merging and see them as two distinct processes. Are the individual mind moments distilled down to kalapas? Kalapas is a term from the Abhidhamma commentary. It's kind of a late theory, an atomic theory of reality. Generally, we don't talk about mind moments as kalapas. It's more, or kalapas. It's more, kalapas refer to physical processes. Can you explain a bit about Mano Loka Vijnana Dhatu? I've read that the brain acts as a receiver and transmitter, and all the memories are stored at Mano Loka. Yeah, this this idea, I think, is what in the Yogacara school, they developed the idea of a laya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness, where memories are stored as one of the levels of consciousness. And I think this is the seed of that idea in the Theravada. I think that is a good analogy to see the brain acting as like a radio receiver, reading the mind and acting as an interface between mental and physical events. Vijnana Dhatu, or Mano Vijnana, is in the Abhidhamma, is the consciousness which knows mental objects. So if we classified memory as a mental object, then it would what you're saying would make sense. And I think, as I said, I think that was developed from that seed into the Laya Vijnana. Can this state be attained with samatha meditation? No, it's quite distinct from samatha meditation, because in samatha meditation, you're striving for a stillness or stability of mind. So you're not going to have this kind of sense of investigation of dhammas that allows you to see the reality of things. Samatha meditation is a very important, and it's I would say it's the best preliminary exercise before you undertake Vipassana, but it's not the same as Vipassana, and you can't have these kind of insights in jhana. If we have a house infested of mice or roaches, what should we do in a Buddhist sense? Yeah, this is a difficult ethical dilemma. If you have serious pest infestations that have to be dealt with for the well-being of the inhabitants, there's no way to escape the karma of killing. But if there's no, if it must be done, then first of all, don't fall into a deluded false view. Don't think there's some way of escaping the karma. You are taking on a bad karma, but it's actually could be considered a mixed karma, because you're making the good karma of purifying the space for the benefit of the living beings that live there. You can minimize the bad karma by trying to avoid feelings of ill will or hatred towards the roaches, and focus your mind on the benefit of a clean home. What is the practical meaning of the step breathing in and out? He knows the mind in Anapanasati. This is the transition actually into doing insight meditation, knowing the body and mind, using the breath as a basis. Dinka says that she wishes it was a mandatory part of every monk's education. I'm not sure how well that would be received, but okay. I've lost my place in the chat here. Okay, here we are. The Dhammakaya sect in Thailand claims that all unlike all other things, Nibbana is the true self, or they regard it as heretical. Yeah, the Dhammakaya is very definitely heretical, and there's a lot of sketchy business associated with the Dhammakaya beyond just their ideas about Nibbana and the self. They've been mixed up in various kind of political and financial chicanery. Now, I would advise stay away from Dhammakaya. What is the difference between kilesas and asawas? Well, the kilesas is a general term that includes all kinds of defilements. It's not very specific. It's not specific at all. It just means corrupted or defiled states of mind. Whereas asawa, there's a specific list of asawas that are considered to be very deeply rooted root defilements. So they're a type of kilesa. While going into deep vipassana, why does it occur that I feel like I'm insane? Is it normal to go through this, or am I doing it wrong? It's quite normal. It's quite common. In my experience of teaching Vipassana, I've several times encountered a meditator who, after doing Vipassana for 2 or 3 days, will come to me and say they think they're going insane. And I ask them to describe their experience. And what it sounds like is that they're becoming aware for the first time. They're making conscious for the first time how actually jumbled and confused their mind normally is. So, and if you persist with it, your mind will calm down and become more clear. But you're really just becoming more conscious, and the first thing you see is how confused and scattered and jumbled your mind has been all along. One meditator described it to me in a really very good metaphor. She said that it feels like I'm sitting in the cabin, and it feels like there's half a dozen radios all tuned to different stations and fading in and out, and sometimes going to static. And that's what her mind felt like. So I would not be concerned. If you persist with it, you'll get through to the other side of that. It's actually a common experience to feel more confused. Another metaphor that I've come up with is that if you're doing a major house cleaning, you're cleaning your a room or the whole house, so you have to move stuff around and so on. There's a period when it seems more jumbled and confused than it was before you started, because you've moved the furniture around and opened boxes and shovel things around from this side to that side.